Chapter 12 of Lovers from a Golden Time, Long Ago. Caladan. A great tumult was about. Men, elves and dwarves, fought in great numbers side by side against a great host. The battlefield was well lit, it was the middle of summer, and the day was still young. But the light of the twin suns was not the only thing brightening the day, for there were great fires burning all around. Monstrous trees, some straight and some twisted, cast great shadows over the land. The roars of dragons could be heard from miles away, and some were much closer. A man garbed in golden Bellatorite armor stood defiantly amongst all the destruction and carnage. He had long, straight black hair that glowed with a golden hue, a sure sign of a divine blessing. And his eyes were golden, like yellow rays from the suns. His skin was an immaculate tanned ivory, as if he had been carved from marble, and it too glowed with a golden hue. The sigil on his breastplate was that of a 10-pronged crown. A long golden cape reached down to his ankles, and on it was sewn the image of the head of a most regal and magnificent golden dragon. In his hand, he held a beautiful, golden Bellatorite blade, its name engraved upon it, Chrysos Osius. If the armor and his golden image were not enough to give away who he was, then it was without doubt the sword that revealed his name. Of the first Bellatorexes, there were 10 who formed a sacred order, they who were called the Ardals. Each Ardal represented one of the holy proms that were part of the crown of Zendivos. It was the Ardal of the Golden Prom that first owned the legendary blade, Chrysos Osius, and his name was Cadmus. He was a human man who became a higher being through the sacred ritual wherein which he became a Bellatorix. The order of Ardals further enhanced him. He had been able to feed directly off the Golden Prom, and its power grew within him. Still, even with all of these things, it did not satiate him, nor did it complete him. It should not be said, though, that he was a greedy man. Avarice and gluttony were not things he knew. Of all things he gained, he took them not for his own pleasure, but for the sake of his family and people. For how could a man lust after such vain and material things of the world when he had the greatest jewel of all? His wife was the goddess Harmonia. To them, all the gold in the world was like dust in the wind compared to their great love. She was the one who completed him. Even amongst a dreadful sight in the land of Daxodius, bearing witness to the atrocities of both demons and dragons, Cadmus still stood firm. The demon folk were enthralled and forced to fight by their monstrous, otherworldly kin, the true demons. It saddened him that it had to be this way, for if he could, he would not fight them nor slay them. The world was being torn asunder. Great openings called abyssal fissures were starting to manifest in many places at a rate that could not be ignored. From these fissures, demons of the abyss could take corporeal form in the waking world. If not dealt with, the abyss would soon consume the world. To make matters worse, some chromatic dragons had started to ally themselves with the demons. And of these chromatic dragons, there was a green dragon who was ancient and powerful. He was a survivor of ages long past, one who had seen, witnessed, and lived through events of such dark nature that he could be considered ancient among the ancients. His name meant death and subjugation to all those that heard it, and that feared name was Vassilodon. Cadmus knew his time was near. After many hundreds of years, both filled with joy and sadness, this would be his final battle. Forgive me, Harmonia. Cadmus looked on, with solemn and melancholy in his voice. Many dragons I have slain, many lives I have saved, and our union has brought much life and brilliance to the world. I shall go to Hades, I will die, but my love shall never die. Do not say such things, honored father. A strong and kind voice said from behind him. Cadmus turned slowly to behold one of the many fruits of his union, one of his golden children, an elf of the golden lineage of Chrysaiphius. They who had pure light skin, with golden hair and golden eyes, spotless of any blemish or imperfection. "Oribel," Cadmus said with a voice that was soft yet powerful, his heart heavy and swollen with grief and sorrow. "Leave this place. Many of your brothers and sisters have fallen, and still yet many more will fall. You are still young for your kind. You are not needed here. Live for me, live for yourself, live for your people, carry my will." "But, honored father," Oribel pleaded, "I would not that you should go to that place alone. This is the wish of the abyssal dragon. He wants you above all else. And it is only I that can stop him. Golden child, golden son, your time for glory and honor will come soon enough. I command you to live until that time is fulfilled. That shall be your doom. As for me, my doom lies here." And with those things said, Oribel knew he could not make argument towards his honored father. Cadmus knew best. His wisdom was boundless. It was not for pride that Cadmus would go, but for honor, duty, and love. It was because he truly knew that no one else could contend with Veseladon, the verdant king. It was raining, but it was a rain like no other. The clouds cried truly, but more came down. Bodies rained from the sky. There were wyverns that flew with mounted riders on their backs, with many on both fighting sides. If the mount went down, so did the rider, and they added to the rain, like the others. Plop, plop, plop. They kept coming down. Bloody, misshapen forms of guts and bone littered the land, all around. "Before we part ways," Cadmus said, "I have one last thing to ask of you, dear son, Oribel." The great Bellatorix watched on, as his descendants and friends fought and died. Vasiladon holds the Red Prom. He plans to fuse himself to the demon throne, using the Prom's power. For it is said he who sits the throne, without being consumed, shall be made the king of all demons. The fell dragon already has a strong influence and control over a great host of demons. I fear what will happen if he is able to sit the throne, though I doubt it will accept him. The great and terrible demon lord, Rixakath, is said to be the inheritor of the throne, and he seeks to sit it soon. Still, of all the contenders I have seen over centuries, of all the fools consumed by that accursed place, this dragon is among the more likely to survive its judgment, and I dare not even fathom the destruction that should come if Rixakath's claim be true. I will not risk it. In the aftermath of this battle, I choose you to be the one to claim the prize I shall win. The Red Prom must not be left in the hands of either demons or dragons. Take it to your home of Orelon, one of the greatest places for sanctification and protection in all of Chrysaiphius. There it shall be safe until those wiser than myself are able to determine what must be done with it." Unwavering Oribel answered, "As you wish, honored father. I see clearly now why I must live. This purpose you lay before me, to carry on your will. I shall go and rally my forces to prepare for claiming the Prom should you fall in battle." Oribel left the hill they stood on. It was a high place, a great vantage point, where many things from all around could be seen. Despite the vast and great colossal trees that rose out of the land, like great and twisted hands rising out of graves, there was much space between them, and they were covered in great thorns with little to no leaves. They came fast upon him, but Cadmus was not at unawares. His senses were honed, his eyes were like that of hawks, and his ears like that of bats. And he could feel the air, the very environment around him, as if it were his own skin. Great wings flapped rapidly around him. Bursts of power spattered him from many angles, some of flame, some of poison, some of ice, and some of lightning, and within seconds he was engulfed in a chaotic storm of deathly powers formed around him. It did nothing to move him, though. He stood still and defiant, and finally waved his hand in a sudden motion, as if commanding the flames and other elements around him. The storm subsided just as fast as it had formed. Golden power started to pulsate and surge around Cadmus. The wyverns and their riders looked on at him. The riders were covered head to toe in armor, and their wyverns were also adorned with armor and heraldry depicting a great green dragon with a red crown, the sign of Vasilodon. For a moment they had halted after the clearing of their storm, though even with their faces covered there was a clear air of puzzlement and surprise to them. Cadmus flourished his blade, Chrysos Osius, and with a sudden swing at the end of the flourish, a great arc of golden power beamed out, hitting several of the mounted riders. The beam ate them and burnt them with a radiant power. Within seconds, the riders that were hit fell to the ground, along with their mounts, squalling and crying out in deep agony as they burned from the golden wrath of Cadmus. "Lay down your arms," Cadmus said with an amplified voice. "This is not a fight you can win. I will not fight or kill those who surrender and beg for mercy." "You are cocky and proud, old man," one of the riders answered. "We have no fear of you or your false golden children. King Vasilodon will have your head." So be it. Their battle continued. The riders came rushing in ones and twos and threes. They were trying to overwhelm him. He blocked and parried all the attacks that came his way. If they had been fighting any others of his forces, even some of his Bellatorexes, they would have most likely taken down a few by now, for some of the riders themselves were also Bellatorexes. However, they were dealing with Cadmus, he who has slayed dragons countlessly of ages past. A golden flame burned inside of him, still as strong and bright as the shining twin suns in all their glory. As much as they tried, and though they were indeed very strong and elite warriors, nothing they did could break through the defenses of Cadmus. His movements were graceful and fast. At one moment he was here, and then the next he was there. In the blink of an eye he would be gone from one spot. The riders quickly started to lose their formation, as they kept falling one by one, cut down and burnt by the golden radiance of Chrysos Osius. Cadmus performed long, wide swings that cleaved both rider and mount in half. His cuts were immaculate. He was dancing to the golden song of Harmonia, bringing balance and justice. His foes around him were simply props to easily be danced around. They fought with valor and fierce determination despite the odds weighed against them. For how vile an enemy they were, that was one thing he could give them some small praise to. Eventually it got to a point where he was left face to face with the rider who had spoken earlier. All of the rider's warrior companions had fallen to Cadmus. The wyvern of the rider was also the largest and most durable of the bunch that had assailed him. Its huge wings spanned a total of at least 100 feet. It was a deep mottled green, and its breath was poison. This rider was clearly the leader of the band of riders that flew into this farce of an attempt to take him out. The rider's underlings had flown into harm's way to protect their commander. They had died for it, but they had bought their leader possibly another minute of life. Another minute to keep flying around, making futile attempts at harming the golden Bellatrix. Some hits did land on Cadmus, but his armor absorbed them all. To him they were so weak, they might as well have been hitting him with stalks of wheat. It was the commander who had any semblance of strength and power that made Cadmus feel something other than light and gentle brushes. Even then, it was not enough to make him stagger in the slightest. From the accent and the way he spoke, Cadmus guessed the rider was a demon folk man, a very large and well-muscled one, that most likely had great standing and rank within the military might of Vasilodon. The commander also seemed to be a Bellatorix, for no man, human, elf or demon folk, could tame and control a wyvern of such size, unless he had the will and power of a Bellatrix. It was also clear that he was garbed in green Bellatorite armor, and that he wielded a large sword lance made of the same material as well. The commander raised up his weapon. Cadmus, today you die. It shall be by my hand. My wyvern shall feast on your flesh, and suck the marrow from your bones. Your head will make a great gift to my king. I am Provexis, Bellatrix of Vassiladon, and one of the greatest of his commanders. My name means your death, and armies quake in fear of its utterance. Cadmus looked on at the proud and noble commander. It was said that crown-born blood ran very thin within the race of demon folk, so thin, in fact, that possibly only 1 in thousands might be an impure crown-born. And amongst their race no pure crown-born were to be found. It was impressive to see a demon folk Bellatrix. Such a thing was rare, even amongst things that were rare to begin with. I may die today, Cadmus said, but it shall not be by your hand. Vassiladon is my prey, and perhaps I shall be his. I grant you one last moment to surrender. You need not be a thrall to him any longer. Lead by example. Show those who follow you that you can be free. Free, Provexis said with disdain in his voice. I am no thrall. I serve my king willingly. It is those that lack wisdom and proper raising that must be enthralled. Come to him willingly or follow in chains. There is choice. That is freedom, serving freely of his own will. Was that really true? Cadmus knew the demon folk were enthralled, some by enchantment and others by physical magical bindings. But to what extent it all went, he was not sure. Just how many had been killed that would have flung down their swords if they truly had the choice to choose. It was all a big mess. There was nothing he could do about it, other than giving them swift and painless deaths. But this Provexis here claimed to be free, serving completely of his own will. Well then, Cadmus said, if you are truly fighting me of your own free will, knowing who I am, then I shall not hold back any longer. I shall grant you one last dance worthy of any warrior. The wyvern roared, and it then sent a cloud of poisonous gas that consumed Cadmus. Provexis shot spears of green and deathly energy out of his sword lance in the spot that Cadmus stood. The torrent continued, and then the gas started to glow, and the color quickly went from a sickly green to a vibrant yellow that soon became gold. Great feathered spectral golden wings sprouted out of the back of Cadmus's armor. He jumped high above the torrent, and then he was flying. In a blink he was face to face with the huge wyvern. The great beast tried several times to bite and spew its breath at Cadmus, but he flowed through the air, dodging all of it, as if he had no cares in all the world. Provexis also tried to jab, swing, and stab at Cadmus, and Cadmus met each thrust and swing with his sword, knocking away the sword lance each time it got near him. This went on for minutes, and Cadmus had weighed the measure of his opponent. He had the power to make his golden particles numb pain or increase it. Out of the mercy in his heart and the love he bore for Harmonia, he would often numb as much pain as he could. But Provexis would not have such a gift. After parrying the sword lance and dodging the head of the wyvern one last time, Cadmus positioned himself. It was sudden and fast. The cut completely severed the neck, and the head and the body of the wyvern were now 2 separate pieces. With its head gone, the beast and its rider began to fall. The impact made a loud sound, and the ground shook beneath it. Before it had hit, though, Provexis had jumped out of his saddle. Cadmus floated down and his feet touched the ground. His spectral golden wings faded away, and he held out his blade with the tip pointed out at Provexis. Vassiladon's commander stared at the blade. His right hand held hard onto his sword lance, and his left was balled into a fist. Seconds passed, and Provexis removed his helm, revealing the face of a demon folk man. His skin was the bluish-grey of most of his kind. He had long black hair, and black ram horns protruded out of his head, and his eyes were a flaring reddish-orange. There were several great scars on his face, evidence that he was a seasoned warrior. Though his sword lance was long, it was complementary in size to him. Demon folk were fairly large compared to most humans and elves, and he was large, even amongst most demon folk, as he stood at 10 feet high, which was 3 feet higher than Cadmus. Pravexis held out his sword lance, pointing it towards Cadmus, matching his challenge. "Curse you, Cadmus. Curse you and all your golden spawn. I raised that wyvern. I trained him. He became so big and great, and yet you cut him down like he was nothing." There were tears in the eyes of Pravexis. It was raining, but the tone of his voice and the undeniable look in his eyes was enough to know that he was crying out of sadness, pain, and probably anger for the loss of his dear friend. They both held their stances, with their blades pointed at each other, for what seemed like minutes. As the rain hit Cadmus's golden armor, it sizzled and turned to a sparkling golden steam, which made him look both beautiful and terrifying. As if in response, dark and abyssal power started to branch out of the ground, from around Pravexis, wrapping itself around him. Red and black veins of energy surged around his body, like bolts of crawling lightning. The rain started to pour harder, and real lightning struck off in the distance, and thunder boomed very quickly after. And when the sound of the thunder reached them, that was their sign to begin once more their duel. Bellatrix against Bellatrix. They both dashed at each other and their blades met. Their clash was so intense and heated that the rain started to bounce off the bubble forming around them, from the sheer pressure of their Bellatorate arms repeatedly striking against each other. Pravexis fought like a madman, with how relentless his attacks were, yet he still moved and positioned himself in a composed and skilled way. After countless strokes and jabs, Cadmus had made several hits on Pravexis, but Pravexis had also made hits on him, and this time, he felt them. For the first time in a while, Cadmus started to feel pain. It was faint, but it was there, and with each hit he took it became more clear and pronounced. Pravexis took Cadmus's hits and pushed through them. He was hurting from them, and the pain Cadmus was infusing into them would have crippled most well-built demon folk by now. Pravexis's Bellatorite armor and Bellatrix powers were helping him, but it should not have been enough, with the amount of power Cadmus was channeling with each and every hit he landed. The abyssal power wrapped around Pravexis was keeping him awake. It was keeping him alive. It fed off his anger and rage, and even the sadness he felt, and it turned all of that into more life and power to keep him fighting on. Cadmus could see it. As each minute passed, Pravexis grew stronger, and in turn, Cadmus grew more tired. Cadmus started to send out great arcing beams of golden radiance, some that Pravexis dodged, but others met their mark, and of the ones that hit, they left great residual damage to the areas in which they spread out over their mark. Pravexis seemed to be weakening and bleeding from these hits, yet he still fought with just as much fervor. Their fight grew so intense and brutal that the hill that Cadmus had been standing on was now turning into a small crater. Dirt and debris piled heavily around the edges of the ring. The rain started to collect at the bottom, and a large pond was soon forming. After what seemed like much time had passed, the two found themselves staring at each other once again, covered in rain, mud, and blood. Cadmus panted and jumped back. Pravexis was also worn out by the looks of his stature. The demon folk commander almost collapsed, but he managed to hold himself up using his sword lance as a crutch, as both his knees hit the ground. "It looks like we may both be at our wits' end," Cadmus uttered loudly, but in slow and forced increments, his tiredness showing clearly in the pacing of his words. "I never would have thought that one of the demon folk would manage to contend with me in such a manner, but alas, I fear I must end this dance." And Cadmus started to glow even more than he had been glowing before. His gold turned a brighter and more vibrant yellow, and there was a brilliance of white light shimmering all around him. His golden eyes turned completely white, like the brilliant light now emanating all around him. Dirt, stone, and droplets of water started to float all around him. The ground was shaking before, but it was now rumbling violently. Cadmus was now channeling the very power of a goddess, the power of his beloved, Harmonia. Pravexis looked on. He held on to his crutch and kept himself up, despite the world quaking all around him. The rain continued to fall on his face, and lightning struck all around, as if it all was mocking him. His blood seeped into the ground, feeding the great land of Daxodius. He grinned, as the water pooling around him turned a murky red from his blood mixing in with it. Demons, yes, I am a demon. Soon, you shall know what a true demon is. Cadmus the Golden. Pravexis screamed and roared in defiance of the sky, in defiance of the ground, and in defiance of the whole world all around him. I can feel it. The blood of all the fallen has filled the roots of the bell trees with new life, and my blood has become a sacrifice and a catalyst. The power of the king, the true ruler of the abyss, awakens within me. I can see his great arms and legs embracing me. Great Lord, O Most High Lord, the King of demons, grant me thy blessing. The great winding trees in the distance began to move like the squirming arms of sea-born beasts. Their great bending trunks produced a wailing sound that made a destructive duet with the constant thunder. Roots came free, and the trees squirmed as if they were large worms. And then what was the tops of the trees, or now the heads of the worms, began to dive back into the ground. They began to dig and burrow, and came up and down again in arcs and waves. Cadmus was still stunned, both from his tired state and from needing to focus on fully absorbing the power of Harmonia. Whoever got their boost first would win this fight. But who would it be? They both remained in place, staring at each other, waiting for their powers to be fully realized. As the demon tree worms grew closer and closer, Cadmus began to grasp just how massive they were. He knew they were big, and had seen them up close, but this was different. Their colossal shadows, the great booming wails, and their domineering presence as they moved, was a testament to how overwhelmingly massive they were. The demon folk called them bell trees, for the great structures naturally grown near their tops. It was said that strong enough winds could shake the bells and make them ring, or that on some rare occasions the trees could move by themselves and sway back and forth to ring their own bells. Many tales were told on what the ringing of the bells meant. Some spoke of dark omens, while others spoke of heralding the dawn of a new age. Perhaps they were one and the same. Ring, ring, ring. The worms had almost arrived. Cadmus wagered it would be less than a minute. Ring, ring, ring. The bells clang, not caring that their former tree-like states were toppled. All they seemed to care about was that they were free to do what they were made to do. Ring, ring, ring. The toll was a dissonant chorus. All the voices seemed to be claiming the main part, but none would support one or the other. It was a chorus where chaos reigned supreme. Ring, ring, ring. It was the chorus of demons, of the abyss, of Tartarus. Ring, ring, ring. It was the toll of the demon king. The great worms rose again, like trees all around the crater, and one took up Pravexis. They all started to twist and intertwine. They were forming a great shape, and soon a demonic beast of titanic proportions was materialized. It was Pravexis. He had become this monster of the abyss. He slammed down one of his great tree limbs onto the spot that Cadmus stood. But when it landed, it stopped abruptly. The area cratered all around it from the pressure, but the impact was not as satisfying as it should have been. There was a sudden jolt. The great limb was sent flying away, and a large chunk of it had been cleanly cut away. Cadmus stood unharmed, with his sword arm extended out. The blade was completely straight with his arm, a sign that he had made a wide slash. Vibrant yellow and white flames danced around Cadmus in his sword Chrysozozias, seemed to be producing them endlessly. The chunk of the great limb came down with a loud crash and was engulfed in the flames. The stump of the limb that had been cut was also aflame. The strange fire started to slowly crawl its way up the arm of the beast. Seeing that the rain and mud would not douse the flames, Provexus, as if by will, released the rest of the limb from his body. That was a wise move. Cadmus rarely used the flames born from the union of his love with Harmonia. They were divine flames that would eat away at evil things and bring balance to malicious forces. If Provexus let the flames continue, he would have been eaten whole, despite the colossal size and power of his new body. Cadmus materialized his spectral Bellatorix wings once again. He was now the very image of what many scholars would call an angel. He flew up and commanded the clouds to part. A hole formed in the dark sky, and the rays of the suns washed over Cadmus and Provexus. Cadmus held his sword out and said a prayer of power, and the sun rays began to flow into his blade, strengthening the flames and making it just that much brighter. It seemed as though he might become a sun himself, with how illuminated the whole area was becoming. Divine light and flame bathed everything around the angel and the demon in a baptism of holy retribution. The battle continued for what seemed like hours, and at the end of it all, Cadmus flew down, covered in blood. The great demon that Provexus had become lay burning in many segmented pieces. The bells were now silent. Cadmus lay down and sprawled out in exhaustion. His eyes began to close. Honored father, honored father. It sounded as though someone was speaking to him. It was a familiar voice. Honored father, wake up, please. Yes, very familiar. He knew that voice. It was the young Oribel. Honored father, you have a duty. You will not die here like this. Rise, rise, please rise again. Cadon opened his eyes. He was lying down in a very comfortable bed. An elven man with shining crimson hair and deep red eyes was staring at him. Rise, the elf said, in a voice he recognized. Rise again, for that is your doom. Current date and world, July 25th, 2326, TP. Of the age of the 10 prongs, the first year, 1 TP started approximately after year 6000 AD ended. Date of the events of the Crown Dream, sometime between 4000 and 5000 AD. Of the Age of Darkness,